"You're getting nothing, Lieutenant," my brother Marcus sneered across the mahogany table, adjusting his Rolex. "Dad's $80 million empire goes to the son who stayed home, not the daughter who ran off to play sailor." I didn't flinch. 14 years in the Navy had taught me discipline. But when our family attorney cleared his throat and said, "Actually, Mr. Montgomery, if I may read the will now," I took a sip of water and smiled. Because I knew something Marcus didn't. My name is Commander Natalie Brooks, and this is the story of how my golden child brother discovered that our billionaire father saw things very differently than he assumed. Growing up in the Montgomery household meant understanding one fundamental truth. Sons mattered, and daughters didn't. At least, not in the way that counted to my parents. My father, Richard Montgomery, built a commercial real estate empire from the ground up. $80 million worth of properties across 3 states. My mother, Catherine, came from old money. The kind that bought country club memberships and political connections. Together, they created the perfect storm of expectations and disappointment. And then there was Marcus. 3 years older than me, born with a silver spoon and Dad's complete attention. From the moment he took his first breath, he was groomed to take over the family business. Private tutors, business camps, networking dinners before he could even drive. Me. I was the afterthought. The daughter who was supposed to marry well, join the junior league, and produce grandchildren. I remember being 8 years old, sitting at the dinner table, excitedly telling Dad about my science fair project. A working model of a submarine I'd built from scratch. I'd spent weeks on it, researching buoyancy and propulsion systems. "That's nice, sweetheart," Dad said without looking up from his phone. Then he turned to Marcus. "Son, I want to show you the blueprints for the new commercial complex downtown. You need to understand these developments if you're going to run this company one day." Marcus was 11. He didn't care about commercial real estate. But he soaked up Dad's attention like it was oxygen. Mom wasn't much better. When I turned 16 and asked if I could intern at one of Dad's properties that summer, she laughed. Actually laughed. "Natalie, that's not appropriate for young ladies. Why don't you volunteer at the hospital gift shop instead? That's much more suitable." Marcus got a brand new BMW for his 16th birthday and a corner office internship. I got nothing for mine. They'd forgotten it entirely. Too busy celebrating Marcus's acceptance to Princeton. But you know what? Being invisible taught me something valuable. I had to create my own worth. If they wouldn't see me, I'd make sure the world did. I graduated high school with honors, top of my class. I applied to the Naval Academy without telling anyone. When the acceptance letter arrived during my senior year, I opened it in my room, alone, tears streaming down my face. I'd done it. On my own terms. Telling my parents was another story entirely. "The Navy?" Mom's voice could have shattered glass. "Natalie, what will people think? A Montgomery daughter in the military? It's so common." Dad was more direct. "You're not going. End of discussion. You'll attend a proper university, major in something respectable, and stop this ridiculous rebellion." "It's not rebellion," I said quietly, standing my ground for the first time in my life. "It's my choice. Your choice." Marcus interjected from the doorway, smirking. "You mean your desperate attempt to get attention? Newsflash, Nat. It won't work. You're still the disappointment." That word. Disappointment. It had followed me my entire childhood, whispered in meaningful glances and heavy sighs. But I went anyway. I packed my bags, declined the trust fund Dad threatened to withhold, which didn't exist for me anyway, and left for Annapolis. The last thing Marcus said to me as I walked out the door? "Don't bother coming back. You're dead to this family." I didn't cry until I was 3 miles away. The Naval Academy was brutal. Plebe summer nearly broke me. Physical training at dawn, academic rigor that made high school look like kindergarten, and the constant pressure to prove I belonged in a predominantly male institution. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. My accomplishments weren't dismissed or overshadowed. When I excelled in navigation, my instructors noticed. When I led my squad through war games, I earned respect. Not because of my last name but because of my skill. I thrived. 4 years later, I graduated in the top 15% of my class. My parents didn't attend. Marcus sent a sarcastic card. Congrats on your participation trophy. Call me when you do something real. I was commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy. I chose surface warfare, serving aboard destroyers and cruisers. I deployed to the Persian Gulf, the Mediterranean, the Pacific. I earned my warfare pin. I made lieutenant. Then lieutenant commander. Then commander. 14 years of service. 14 years of discipline, sacrifice, and purpose. During those years, I came home exactly 3 times. Once for my grandmother's funeral. Dad barely acknowledged me. Once when Mom had a health scare that turned out to be nothing. Marcus made sure to mention how I'd abandoned the family. And once for Christmas 5 years ago, a disastrous visit that ended with me leaving 2 days early. That Christmas, Marcus had announced his engagement to Sloane, a socialite with family connections Dad approved of. The entire dinner was a celebration of Marcus's success. His promotion to vice president of Montgomery Properties, his upcoming wedding, his new penthouse. I sat quietly, in my service dress blues, feeling like a stranger at someone else's party. So, Natalie, Dad finally addressed me. Still playing sailor? Playing. As if my career was a hobby. I'm commanding a navigation department aboard a guided missile destroyer, I replied evenly. We just returned from a 7-month deployment. How interesting, Mom said in that tone that meant it absolutely wasn't. Marcus, tell everyone about the property deal you just closed. And just like that, I disappeared again. But here's the thing about being invisible for so long. You learn to watch. You learn to listen. You notice things other people miss. Like how Dad's health had deteriorated. How he'd lost weight, moved slower, seemed distracted during Marcus's monologues about business strategies and expansion plans. Or how Marcus had become increasingly controlling, inserting himself into every decision at Montgomery Properties, pushing Dad toward aggressive investments that made the older man uncomfortable. Or how Mom had started making comments about securing the family legacy and ensuring the business stays in capable hands, always looking at Marcus when she said it. After that Christmas, I went back to my ship and threw myself into my work. I didn't call home. They didn't call me. It was easier that way. Then, 8 months ago, I received an unexpected email. From Dad. The subject line read, "We need to talk. Private." I stared at my laptop in my tiny stateroom, anchor already released in a port in Spain. Dad never emailed me. In 14 years of service, I could count our communications on one hand. I opened it with trembling hands. Natalie, I know I haven't been the father you deserved. I've spent the past year doing a lot of thinking, especially about how I treated you. About the choices I made. I'm sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe a year. I haven't told your mother or Marcus yet. I wanted to talk to you first. There are things I need to explain. Things about the business, about my estate, about decisions I made long ago that I never shared with anyone. Can you come home? Not for them, for me. I need to tell you the truth before I run out of time. Dad. I requested emergency leave within the hour. 3 days later, I was sitting in Dad's private study, the one Marcus was never allowed to enter without permission, looking at a man I barely recognized. He'd aged 20 years in 8 months. Gray, thin, moving like every breath hurt. But his eyes were clearer than I'd ever seen them. Thank you for coming, he said softly. You said you needed to tell me the truth, I replied, still guarded. What truth? He sighed, gesturing to a leather folder on his desk. I need to start with something I've never told anyone. Your grandfather, my father, built the original Montgomery business. But he had conditions for how it should be passed down. I leaned forward, listening. When he died, he left me everything in a trust with specific instructions. The business was to be evaluated, managed, and ultimately inherited by the child who demonstrated the best judgment, integrity, and independence. Not the oldest. Not the son. The most deserving. My heart started pounding. I betrayed his wishes, Dad continued, his voice thick with regret. I convinced myself that Marcus was the obvious choice because that's what I wanted to believe. Traditional. Safe. A son to carry on the Montgomery name in business. But you were wrong, I said quietly. I was blind, he corrected. I saw what I wanted to see in Marcus. And I completely failed to see what was right in front of me with you. Tears pricked my eyes. 14 years of armor, and this man was breaking through it with a few sentences. Over the past 3 years, I've watched Marcus closely, Dad said. Really watched. And I've seen things that terrify me. He's reckless with investments, dismissive of our employees, more concerned with image than substance. He treats the business like his personal toy. Meanwhile, he continued looking directly at me, you built yourself into a leader. You earned respect in one of the most demanding careers imaginable. You made difficult decisions, led people through life-or-death situations, and never asked me for a single thing. I didn't think you'd give me anything even if I asked, I said honestly. I know. And that's my failure, not yours. He opened the folder, revealing legal documents. I've spent the past year working with my attorney. Not the family attorney, a different one Marcus doesn't know about. I've made changes to my will. Significant changes. He slid the papers across to me. I scanned them, my eyes widening with each paragraph. Dad, this is everything, he said simply. The business, the properties, the investments. All of it goes to you. Marcus gets a trust fund with enough to live comfortably, but nothing more. The Montgomery business empire goes to the daughter who earned it, not the son who expected it. I couldn't breathe. Marcus will destroy you for this. Mom will. I'm already dying, Natalie. What can they do to me? He smiled sadly. But I need you to promise me something. Don't tell them. Not until after I'm gone. Let them believe what they want to believe. The will reading will happen with our family attorney. He has the official documents. But this conversation, these papers, this is just between us. Why are you showing me now? Because I need you to understand. This isn't about money or revenge. This is about making things right. About honoring my father's original vision and finally seeing my daughter for who she really is. He reached across and took my hand. The first physical affection I'd received from him in over a decade. You are extraordinary, Natalie. And I'm sorry it took me dying to realize it. We talked for hours that day. About his regrets, about my career. About the grandfather I barely remembered but who had apparently seen something in me before I was old enough to understand it. Dad died 4 months later. I took leave and came home for the funeral. Marcus played the grieving son perfectly, accepting condolences and making arrangements like the dutiful heir apparent. At the reception, he cornered me in the hallway. I suppose you'll leave again now that you've made your obligatory appearance? I'm staying for the will reading, I said calmly. He laughed. Why bother? You know how this goes. The business goes to me. That's how it's always been meant to be. I just smiled. We'll see. The will reading was scheduled for 3 days after the funeral. The setting was almost theatrical. Dad's favorite attorney, Mr. Wellington, a man in his 70s with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, presiding over a mahogany table in the Montgomery Properties conference room. Present, Mom, Marcus, Marcus's wife Sloane, me, and a handful of Dad's business associates who had been named in various bequests. Marcus was practically vibrating with anticipation. He'd already started talking about restructuring plans and new directions for the company. Mom sat beside him, dabbing her eyes but looking more calculated than grief-stricken. I sat across from them in my dress blues, hands folded, expression neutral. 14 years in the military had taught me the ultimate poker face. That's when Marcus made his move. Before Mr. Wellington could even open the document folder, Marcus stood up, cleared his throat, and addressed the room like he was already CEO. Before we begin, he announced, I just want everyone to know that I'm prepared to take on my father's legacy. Montgomery Properties will continue to thrive under my leadership. I have plans for expansion, modernization, and... Marcus, Mr. Wellington interrupted gently but firmly, Perhaps we should read the will first? Marcus waved dismissively. Of course. But we all know how this goes. Dad built this company for me. I'm the eldest. I'm the son. I've been training for this my entire life. He looked directly at me, his smile sharp as a knife. No offense, little sister, but you made your choice when you joined the Navy. You're getting nothing, Lieutenant. This is for people who actually stayed and contributed to the family. The room went silent. Even Mom looked uncomfortable with how blatant Marcus was being. That's when I did it. I took a slow sip of the water in front of me, set down the glass carefully, and smiled. Just smiled. Marcus's confident expression flickered. What's so funny? Nothing, I said softly. Please continue, Mr. Wellington. The attorney adjusted his glasses and opened the folder. Very well. As executor of Richard Montgomery's estate, I will now read the last will and testament. He began with the standard legal language, then moved to specific bequests. A donation to Dad's favorite charity. A vintage car to an old friend. A generous pension to the longtime housekeeper Mom had wanted to fire years ago. Then came the big one. To my wife, Catherine Montgomery, Mr. Wellington read, I leave our primary residence and a trust fund that will provide for her comfort and security for the remainder of her life, valued at approximately $4 million. Mom nodded, satisfied. That was expected. To my son, Marcus Montgomery. Marcus leaned forward, practically salivating. I leave a trust fund of $2 million, to be distributed annually over 10 years, with a stipulation that he may not contest this will or he forfeits the entire amount. The room went so quiet you could hear the air conditioning hum. Marcus's face went from confident to confused to red with anger in about 3 seconds. Wait. What about the business? What about the properties? Mr. Wellington continued, unperturbed. To my daughter, Commander Natalie Brooks, I leave the entirety of Montgomery Properties, including all commercial real estate holdings, investment portfolios, and business assets, currently valued at approximately $78 million. The explosion was immediate. What? Marcus roared, slamming his hands on the table so hard the water glasses jumped. That's impossible. He couldn't. I assure you, Mr. Montgomery, Wellington said calmly, the will is legally sound, properly witnessed, and filed with the appropriate authorities. Your father was of sound mind when he made these changes approximately 8 months ago. Marcus spun to face me, his face purple with rage. You manipulated him. You came back and poisoned him against me. This is fraud. I remained seated, calm. I didn't manipulate anyone, Marcus. I just finally gave Dad the chance to see both of us clearly. You don't deserve this, he shouted. You abandoned the family. You know nothing about running a business. You're a goddamn sailor. I'm a commander in the United States Navy, I corrected, my voice steel. I lead people, make life or death decisions, and manage million-dollar equipment. I think I can handle commercial real estate. Mom finally found her voice. Natalie, this is absurd. You can't possibly want to take over your father's business. You have your military career. Just sign it over to Marcus. That's the right thing to do. The right thing. I stood slowly, drawing myself to my full height. The right thing would have been treating me like I mattered for the past 32 years. The right thing would have been Dad acknowledging my accomplishments instead of pretending I didn't exist. We gave you everything. Mom protested. You gave me nothing, I said flatly. You gave Marcus everything. Private schools, cars, business opportunities, unconditional support. Me. I got forgotten birthdays and disappointment. That's not, Mom started, but I cut her off. It is true. And you know what? I'm grateful. Because being invisible taught me to be self-sufficient. Joining the Navy taught me to be strong. And Dad finally realizing his mistake taught me that sometimes people can change, even if it takes them dying to do it. Marcus was shaking with fury. I'll contest this. I'll tie it up in court for years. You'll never see a penny. Actually, Mr. Wellington interjected, if you contest the will, You forfeit your entire trust fund per the stipulation I read. Additionally, your father anticipated this possibility and included ironclad provisions. Commander Brooks is the legal heir to Montgomery Properties. This is not negotiable. I pulled a document from my uniform pocket, the copy Dad had given me in his study months ago. Dad knew you'd react this way, Marcus. He knew you'd threaten and bluster and make a scene. He also knew that I'd honor his wishes and run this company with the integrity he wished he'd shown earlier. Sloane, Marcus's wife, who'd been silent until now, suddenly stood. Come on, Marcus. We don't need their charity. You're better than this family anyway. Marcus gave me one last look of pure hatred. You'll fail. You'll run it into the ground, and everyone will know you didn't earn this. I earned my rank, I said quietly. I earned my position. I earned every single thing I have. You earned nothing. You just expected it to be handed to you. He stormed out, Sloane trailing behind. Mom followed, pausing at the door to deliver one parting shot. You've torn this family apart. I hope you're happy. I'm not happy, I replied honestly. But I'm finally seen. The next 6 months were brutal. Marcus did try to contest the will, but his attorney told him it was airtight. He burned through his first annual payment of $200,000 in 3 months, mostly on legal fees and maintaining the lifestyle he thought he was entitled to. Mom refused to speak to me entirely. Extended family took sides, most of them with Marcus, because that's what they'd always expected would happen. I took terminal leave from the Navy to transition full-time into running Montgomery Properties. It was one of the hardest decisions I'd ever made. The military had been my family for 14 years. But Dad had entrusted me with something bigger. A chance to redefine what the Montgomery legacy meant. My first move was meeting with every single employee. Not just management. Everyone. The maintenance staff, the administrative assistants, the property manager's dad had barely acknowledged. I learned that Marcus had been cruel. Dismissive. He'd fired a property manager for questioning a bad investment and had harassed multiple female employees. I also learned that Dad, despite his faults as a father, had been respected by most of his employees. They'd watched his health decline and worried about what would come next. We thought Marcus would drive us all out within a year, one longtime manager told me. Your father made some mistakes, but at least he cared about the business. Marcus only cared about himself. I implemented changes. Better benefits. Transparent communication. Sustainable investment strategies instead of Marcus's reckless expansion plans. I brought in experts where I lacked experience and learned voraciously. Turns out, leadership is leadership. Whether you're commanding a destroyer or managing commercial properties, the fundamentals are the same. Respect your people, make informed decisions, and lead by example. The business not only survived my first year, it thrived. We increased profits by 18% and improved employee retention by 40%. Industry publications took notice. New blood at Montgomery Properties. Commander-turned-CEO Natalie Brooks reinvents family empire. Marcus saw the articles. He sent me one email, just 2 words, pure luck. I didn't respond. 2 years into running the company, I received an unexpected visitor. Marcus showed up at my office unannounced, looking diminished. The swagger was gone. He'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. I need help, he said simply, standing in my doorway. I gestured to a chair. Okay. He sat, not meeting my eyes. The trust fund isn't enough. Sloane left me. Turns out she was only interested in the Montgomery fortune, not the Montgomery black sheep. I'm broke. Natalie. Completely broke. Part of me, the part that remembered every dismissal, every insult, every moment of being invisible, wanted to tell him to leave, to experience what it felt like to be cast aside. But I thought about Dad. About his regrets. About how dying had given him clarity but not enough time to truly make amends. What do you want from me, Marcus? A job, he said quietly. I know I don't deserve it. I know I was terrible to you. But I'm asking anyway. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. Why should I? Because you're better than me, he said, finally looking up. You always were. I just couldn't admit it because admitting that meant admitting I wasn't special. That everything I thought I'd earned was just handed to me. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't tearful remorse or genuine understanding. But it was honest. And sometimes, honesty is all you can hope for. I'll give you a job, I said finally. Entry-level property management. You'll report to someone else, not to me directly. You'll work your way up if you earn it. No special treatment. No shortcuts. His jaw clenched, but he nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, I said. You might not last a month. He lasted 6 months before quitting. The work was too hard, the respect too difficult to earn, the reality of actual accountability too much for him. But at least he tried. And at least I gave him the chance our father never gave me. 3 years after Dad's death, while organizing files in what used to be his study, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. It had been tucked into a book, a naval history book I'd recommended to him years ago, which he'd apparently purchased and never mentioned. Inside was a letter, dated a week before he died. Dear Natalie, if you're reading this, the will has been read and you know the truth. I hope Marcus hasn't made things too difficult. I hope your mother eventually comes around, though I suspect that may take longer. I want you to know why I really did this. It wasn't just about the business. It was about breaking a cycle. My father, your grandfather, built Montgomery Properties from nothing. He told me once that his greatest fear was creating children who never understood struggle, who never earned their own worth. He made me promise that I'd pass the business to the child who demonstrated character, not entitlement. I broke that promise for 30 years. I let tradition and my own ego blind me to what was right in front of me. You were always the child my father hoped for. Independent, strong, principled. And I was too stubborn to see it. This isn't about money, sweetheart. This is about giving you the recognition you earned but I never gave. This is about saying that I see you now. I'm proud of who you became, despite having parents who failed to support you. Run the company your way. Make it something even better than my father imagined. And forgive me if you can, though I don't deserve it. You were never the disappointment, Natalie. I was. With love and regret. Dad. I cried for an hour after reading that letter. For the father I'd wanted. For the relationship we'd never had. For the reconciliation that came too late but still mattered. 5 years after that while reading, Montgomery Properties is worth over $120 million. We've expanded into sustainable development, affordable housing initiatives, and community-focused projects. We're not just profitable. We're making a difference. Mom eventually did come around, though it took 3 years and a health scare that made her realize life's too short for grudges. We have lunch once a month now. It's not perfect, but it's something. Marcus remarried, moved to another state, and started a small consulting business. We're not close, but we're civil. Last Christmas, he sent me a card that just said, "You were right. About everything." I framed that card. People ask me if I regret leaving the Navy. I don't. I served with honor, led with integrity, and when I was called to serve in a different way, I answered. That's what service means, showing up where you're needed, even if it's not where you planned. The Montgomery Empire isn't about money or status or proving my worth anymore. It's about legacy, the real kind. The kind that means taking care of people, making ethical decisions, and building something that matters. My brother said I'd get nothing from Dad's $80 million will. He was wrong. I got everything. Not the money, though yes, that too, but something far more valuable. I got seen. I got acknowledged. I got the chance to prove that the invisible daughter was the right choice all along. And that smile when Mr. Wellington started reading? That was for the 8-year-old girl who built a submarine and was ignored. That was for the teenager who left for the Naval Academy and was told she was dead to the family. That was for every moment I was overlooked, dismissed, and forgotten. That smile said, I was always worthy. You just couldn't see it. And now everyone sees it.